Hey guys, it's Rush. Hope you're doing well. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about the Hori Octa Pro and some of the key issues as to why this controller did not deliver. When I first heard about the Hori Octa Pro and updates to the Hori Octa, I was very excited because it offered a lot of functionality that I believed we needed when it comes to current Gen 5 pads. The design functionality, the ability to change the D-pad and PS5 compatibility, it has a lot to offer. But unfortunately, because of some of the design choices Hori made, it did not deliver. This video today, I want to talk about those issues and what I've done to modify / fix those problems. So what you see in front of you is a heavily modified Hori Octa Pro, and I'll go into depth to explain what I've done to this controller. So the first thing you'll notice is the analog stick has been removed. I've taken this out. To do that, you need to take the control pad apart and you're able to pull the left analog stick out. It does take a bit of force to pull that out. And the reason I've removed that is because the position of the analog stick is in the way. It is too close to the D-pad. So if you are a D-pad user, your finger will knock into the analog stick. You can disable the analog stick via the Hori Octa Pro software, but even still, your finger will still knock it and it's very annoying. The second thing I've changed, and it's quite difficult to catch this on the camera, is the lip that sits around the D-pad. So this area, this entire area is raised, particularly around the analog stick. You can see it's got this octa gate around the analog stick. Now I've sanded this, particularly this area, sanded it down, and I've sanded the lip that goes around the edge. Now the reason I've done that is because the lip sits quite high. It's higher than I'd like it to be, and it made pressing down and right very challenging. You'd try and do motion inputs on this side, and I could feel that the lip was obstructing my ability to press down enough, if that makes sense. So I spent a lot of time. I used sanding pads to attack this. It was 180 grade sanding pads. Took quite a bit of time, but just to gently sand this area down. Now I did take the cover off when I did that to make it easier to get to this area, but I did not, I wouldn't say damage, but I did catch the touchpad, caught a bit of the face of the controller here. I'm not really too bothered about that, but yeah, I took a fair bit of time to sand down this side of the octa gate and then the actual lift, the raised or lifted area around the D-pad. I tackled that, and that, it may sound silly, but that made a massive difference, a really big difference to getting inputs, particularly pressing the down and the right button. The next thing I did on this controller is I again was sanding, and I sanded down this D-pad. So the cross-shaped D-pad, I like this D-pad because it's reminiscent of the PS4 Hori D-pad. So it's very similar. It's cross-shaped, but it is a actual circle. So it has this rounded area where the diagonals are, which the old Hori did not have. So these D-pads, all of them that come bundled with the Hori Octa Pro, they are not flat. They have like raised edges. It's concave towards the middle. So I sanded down the edges to make it a little bit more flat. There is still a bit of a lip around the edge, which I don't mind. But I tried it. It was more trial and error. I thought, let me just try it. Let me just see how it feels. And sanding it down has made it feel better for me personally. I wouldn't say it's a big deal. It was more an experiment, but I do prefer the way it feels now, the cross-shaped D-pad. Another modification I made, and this is something I remember on the old Hori Octa, is the size of the rear shoulder buttons. So you can see I've took a lot of the material off the back end of the shoulder buttons. The reason for this is because I like to rest my fingers at the back of the controller so I can just quickly press buttons when I need them, and because of the size of those shoulder buttons, I didn't have much space to rest my fingers, to the point I'd have my fingers sort of there and I'd accidentally roll them onto the rear shoulders to get miss inputs. I was getting the inputs when I didn't want them, and that was really annoying. So I've took a lot of the material off. As you can see there, the actual circuit board is on show. I've only gone that far. I'd actually want to go more, but the reason I haven't gone any further is because the legs that sit underneath the button that press the actual switch down, I was sanding into that, and I don't want to sand that down because that will actually break the shoulder buttons. So that, as anal as this seems, that's made a massive difference, a huge difference, and I prefer the way it now feels. And I wouldn't say it's well, yeah, in my opinion, it's a bad design, but for some people, it may not bother them. For me, it was a real annoyance. And the final modification I made to the controller are these sticky dome metal pads. So these are used as replacement pads for Xbox controllers. I have followed the instructions given by Stripes. Stripes is a YouTuber who does FGC content, controller content. They reached out to me and advised me about these sticky pads and how you can put them on your Hori Octa Pro. You actually put them on the circuit board to improve the feel of the button presses. They're quite clicky. They are actually clicky. So it improves the way it feels. But from what I've experienced adding this in, it improves the consistency of the directional input. So you're up, down, left, right. It's more consistent. There's more surface area that's pressed down when you press those buttons. You have to place these very carefully onto the circuit board so it touches the metal elements that register the inputs. So it's very finicky to do. I will include footage of me making this mod to the D-pad in this video. I did this before and I used the cheap pads, which Stripes did say not to use, and it started off okay, but then as time went on, it didn't feel too great. So following Stripes' instructions, link to that video and his channel in the video description. Shout out to Stripes. Following his instructions, using the correct pads, the pad is a lot better. And I'd say that's one of the biggest problems with this controller. The D-pad, by default, out of the box, what I found with the D-pad is ignoring the lip being in the way and the analog stick position. My motion inputs were not the best. I would feel like I'm pressing from the down to the right or the down to the left. And sometimes I'd feel like I'd get the motions okay. Other times I felt like I didn't. And I couldn't get a level of consistency. It was very frustrating trying to get those inputs. Now, I am super critical. I am a very picky person, hence all the changes I've made to the controller. But the D-pad is definitely off. It just doesn't feel, it actually feels worse than the old Hori controller. That D-pad was okay at best. It wasn't the best part of the controller. It was decent. But this, in terms of the way the inputs are registered on this pad out of the box, not great, very inconsistent. But with that mod, I have to say it's really cleaned up the inputs. They feel consistent now, which is amazing. So I recommend the mod. If you have one of these controllers and you're looking to improve the D-pad, I highly recommend it. It's very finicky, but it can be done if you take care when doing the mod. The final thing I wanted to point out about this controller is the position of the D-pad. So even with the changes I've made, something still felt a little bit off and I couldn't really tell why that was the case. So in front of you, I have the Turtle Beach. If I hold this in a natural position, my thumb sits right over the middle. So the ball of my thumb, this area here, sits right over the middle. And that's natural to me. That feels great. The old Hori Fighting Commander. If I do the same again, you can see the ball of my thumb sits right in the middle. Feels great. Going back to the Hori Octa Pro, if I hold it naturally, my thumb sits more towards the down and the right of the D-pad. It doesn't sit central. That's like a natural position. I can just move it across, but I have to consciously do that rather than just let it sit naturally. It does sit more here, the ball of my thumb, rather than here. And it's a me issue. It's not a controller issue, but it is impacted by the design. And I think this is because of this whole area, because of the D-pad being close to this side, the thickness, the way the handle is. My hand just naturally sits more like that than like this. So it's something I will look into to address, and it definitely impacts when I'm trying to do quarter circle inputs on this side, because my thumb, I'm doing the quarter circle, but my thumb's already sort of sitting here and I'm missing the down input. It's the down input that's more of an issue when I'm doing inputs this way, and it is because of the position. Again, like I said, I am super critical and I am looking at this controller like under a microscope, but it is noticeable to me. It's significant. It does impact my play. So my plan of action is I'll add some gaffer tape to this area here to bulk out that side of the controller, so my hand moves across a little bit. It'd be interesting to see if that makes a difference. But with these changes thus far, it makes the controller much better, in my opinion. It's a lot of work to go through, but it's a hell of a lot better. I'm really impressed with how it feels so far. I will keep testing it because it could just end up feeling terrible over time. It could just be the honeymoon phase, but I'm hoping that this is my go-to controller now moving forwards. So you will see me using this on any future streams. Testing the controller in Street Fighter 6, what I noticed straight away is how snappy the buttons feel. It's still stiff, so you still have to press quite hard on the directions, but it's very snappy and it's very clean. I get all my inputs now consistently, and that's the big difference. The inputs, whether it's directional inputs, whether it's motion inputs, they're a lot more crisp, giving me much more confidence. And that's the main thing. I think before the pad would be a little inconsistent, and that was my big gripe. But now inputs are clean. As long as you pump the inputs, you really press into that down input. That's more a me issue because of my thumb position. I don't have any issue at all. The quicker inputs cancelling DP into super, I don't have issues with that now as long as I make sure I press into the down input. Here's some examples of DP into super. It's a lot easier to do the DP cancel into super. This particular sequence is always quite tricky for me. I was struggling to get the 2 fast quarter circle forward inputs from the single hit light punch DP, whereas now it's very easy to do on this controller. The only thing I have to do is, I mentioned this a few times, is I have to make sure I press into the down. Again, that's a me thing, but as long as I press into the down when I'm doing that super input, it's perfectly fine. But what has improved that situation isn't just the sticky pads, it is the removal of the surface area here around the D-pad, but also removing the analog stick and the lip around the analog stick. That's made the D-pad so much better. It's a lot of work to do, as I mentioned, but if you're willing to make that modification to sand this down and use the sticky pads, honestly, the D-pad is just so much better. So I will continue sharing my opinions on this controller. I'll give you all of the latest information. If you want to find out more, make sure you tune into the Twitch streams to see me using it live. But thanks for watching, guys. Any questions or queries you have about this modification, the controller itself, give me a shout and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.